Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this ArcGIS Hub webinar. My name is Miles Gabriel, and I'll be hosting the session today. So I'm a commercial manager at Esri UK with responsibility for collaboration, and that includes open data and citizen engagement. And I've got a background in GIS, data licensing, and since about 2009, supporting the publication of government open data. So just before we start, for those who have joined via your computer, that will default to your computer speakers or headphones. So if you prefer to use your phone, you can just select telephone in the audio pane on the control panel, and then the dial-in information is shown there. If you have questions during the presentation, so please ask those. There's a questions pane also in the control panel, and then we'll address those questions anonymously during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If a fuller answer is required or we run out of time, we'll respond to all of those questions via email. Also, just to note, the webinar is being recorded, so we will email a link to the recording to all registrants, so please feel free to share that with colleagues. In terms of the structure of the webinar, we're going to have 4 10-minute presentations, roughly 10-minute presentations. So I will introduce ArcGIS Hub. James from Cheshire East will then present on Cheshire East's open data journey so far. And Katie will discuss RSVP's intended use of ArcGIS Hub Premium. So Charlie from our professional services team is then going to demonstrate how ArcGIS Hub Premium can cater for different user groups by progressively making data and collateral available to increasingly engaged user groups. So following the webinar, we will be circulating a feedback survey. It's very useful for us to know if our webinars are of value. So do please respond, do rate the webinar, and do let us know of any topics that you'd like to cover for future webinars. Okay, so moving swiftly on to the introduction to ArcGIS Hub. So the first point to note is that Hub is applicable to all sectors, so public authorities, utilities, transport, charities and commercial. Those sectors clearly have a broad customer base, so citizens, residents, supporters and volunteers, and commercial customers. So rather than repeat that list every time I mention some functionality, I'll use a catch-all term of customer and apply that term to your customer base. The sectors also naturally have different drivers that hubs can support. So we're just going to briefly look at some of those drivers as we see them, and I'm sure you will have other drivers that you're aware of. So the first of those drivers is information legislation. So those on the call from public authorities will be familiar with this list and indeed the acronyms. So freedom of information, environmental information regs, the reuse of public sector information regs, etc., etc. And others, so charities, utilities, commercial companies, won't be subject to much of this, so things like freedom of information, but they may be subject to some elements. So water companies, for example, are subject to the environmental information regs. And in addition, most sectors will have some information that they have to submit to regulators or that they have to make publicly accessible. So there's an information legislation context for everyone. The second driver is that then this growing supply of information legislation has led to an increased demand for transparency. So the most recent Cabinet Office national statistics on FOI requests show that they are up last year, so 2017 to 18, they're up 7% to now 50,000 requests a year for a group of central government bodies. That excludes bodies like the Environment Agency, who I know get about 35,000 requests themselves per year. In addition, My Society released a report recently stating that councils now receive 467,000 requests a year. So that's double the number in 2010 and 10 times that group of central government bodies. So these are hugely significant numbers and require considerable effort from public authorities to manage and appropriately respond to them. But what is also clear is that the demand for increased transparency is not limited to just those organisations subject to the legislation, but it's created an increased expectation of transparency on other sectors. So this leads to our third driver, which is about organisational trust and reputation. So the report published by My Society, they state that the increase in requests underlines the importance of FOI as a tool for local democracy. Unfortunately, however, there doesn't appear to be a link between the FOI request numbers and customer trust in organisations. So Grosvenor, one of the UK's largest property companies, published a report recently on some research they did into public trust in developers and the planning system. And just 7% of respondents trust local authorities to make decisions about large-scale developments that are in the best interests of the area. So this gets worse if you look at the trust in private developers, which for respondents of that YouGov survey was only 2%. So increasingly, there's a realization that to improve trust and reputation requires organizations not just to reactively respond to requests for information, but to operate transparently in a proactive manner, and also to engage with their customers, i.e. to allow them to play a meaningful role in discussions, decision-making, and the implementation of projects affecting them. So the fourth and final driver I want to cover is that for many organisations, there's increasing pressure on the delivery and operation of services. So whether that's due to reduced budgets, population dynamics, or other factors, and this is driving the need for increased operational efficiency. So here again, there's increasing appreciation that engaging customers has the potential to improve operational efficiency. And one example would be Madrid. So Madrid recently implemented participatory budgeting, where citizens now decide how 100 million euros a year is spent. Before it was implemented, Madrid City was able to start 30 to 40 projects a year. With participatory budgeting and the same budget, the city now starts 300 projects a year. So as in their own words, when people are responsible for the money and take part, you can deliver much more. So this is the context that ArcGIS Hub sits within, and these are all the areas where we believe that ArcGIS Hub can help you. So a final point to mention, as some of you may be thinking, why are Esri, a geospatial company, in this space? Well, the reason is because that place is fundamental to all of the topics we've just discussed. So customers want to be engaged about and they want to improve their local area. They make requests and complaints about local issues, and they report things in their neighbourhoods, and they volunteer near where they live or where they work. So geography is therefore a facilitator and an enabler, and Esri is focusing a lot of effort on geo-enabled systems. So these are systems targeted at focused workflows that are improved by being geo-enabled. And I hope that by the end of today's webinar, you'll agree that ArcGIS Hub does indeed benefit from being geo-enabled. So what is ArcGIS Hub? So ArcGIS Hub is a component of Esri's ArcGIS platform, and that's important because it means that Hub is an integrated component of ArcGIS Online. And this brings the benefits of software as a service, but also the benefit of being able to utilize the functionality from across the platform. So things like operations dashboards, web maps, web apps, survey tools, etc. And they all help extend the system of engagement element of the ArcGIS platform. So traditionally, ArcGIS was considered as a system of record, a place to collect and manage geospatial and asset data. And over time, it's grown into also a system of insight, so a system that facilitates analytics, modeling, and data exploration, but also a system of engagement. So once you have data and insight, in order for that data and insight to be valuable, it must be shared so that others can visualize it, analyze it, and so that you can collaborate with those audiences, whether they're internal or external. So just to note, ArcGIS Hub is provided at two levels. So we have ArcGIS Hub Foundation and ArcGIS Hub Premium, and I'll introduce those two levels to you now. So as noted, ArcGIS Hub is a component of ArcGIS Online, and ArcGIS Hub Foundation, which is the base level, is included for free within ArcGIS Online. So if you have an ArcGIS Online named user account, you already have access to ArcGIS Hub Foundation. So Hub Foundation enables you to fulfill those transparency needs and obligations we talked about by sharing your authoritative spatial and non-spatial data via a quick to set up, modern, mobile-ready open data portal. So it's important to note that it isn't just a spatial data portal. Whilst it's geo-enabled, it's not just about spatial data, and the goal really should be to create a single place for all of your transparency data, rather than having multiple different places for customers to have to go and find your data just because some of it happens to be spatial, some of it happens to be tabular. So ArcGIS Hub Foundation includes a site builder template to allow you to build sites such as these. And you can do so without the need for any development. It also includes metadata templates to help create and publish metadata records, and then link those records to your data. So whether you've chosen to store that data internally within your own environment or your own cloud environment, or whether you want to publish that data in ArcGIS Online. So the ability within the portal is there to allow auto-generation of multiple download formats. So you upload a dataset, point to a dataset in its source format. The website will then auto-generate the download formats as people request them. And it also includes a REST API for language-independent data access by developers and data scientists. In addition, for public authorities, it does support open data harvesting, so harvesting of records to data.gov.uk. So you can see a few examples of the sites that can be created with Hub Foundation. So they include the UN's Sustainable Development Goals site and also the RSPB's Open Data Portal. So just to reiterate, this is free within ArcGIS Online if you have a named user account. So it's a fully fledged open data platform that is virtually available for free. So also worth noting is Hub Foundation can be used for a lot more than just open data portals. So it can also help with that proactive organizational transparency that we discussed. So these are some sites from Washington, DC that publicize all of their web maps and story maps to provide richer, more targeted messaging about specific issues. So rather than just publishing the data, they're also publishing stories and applications, and they can use Hub Foundation to build sites to advertise those. I appreciate this slide is fairly busy, but again, this is an example of Hub Foundation being used for transparency. So this is created by Washington DC's mayor's group, and they are sites targeted at specific issues of key focuses for the mayor. So they include economic development, housing, transportation, public safety, environment, and education. And what they provide is details and KPIs, data and graphs about the activity that Washington DC are doing in those areas. So again, that's how the various uses of ArcGIS Hub Foundation. So moving on to Hub Premium then. So Hub Premium is also hosted within ArcGIS Online, and it also enables creation of modern, scalable, mobile-ready websites, such as this example from Wellington City Council. But it builds upon the functionality that you get with Hub Foundation. So whereas Hub Foundation supports one-way proactive publication of transparency information, Hub Premium is about two-way engagement. So it provides additional functionality and tools that make customer engagement efforts much easier, including dashboards for monitoring feedback and progress, event management systems so that you can schedule events and customers can sign up to attend those community events, tools for creating and managing initiatives and initiative teams, which I'll show in a second, and most importantly, it provides customers with secure, authenticated identity. So this is identity within the ArcGIS platform, and that's the crux of Hub Premium, because it then allows customers to follow initiatives, receive updates, access secure content, sign up and attend those events that you schedule and publish, provide feedback to you, or even collect, submit and analyze data for you. And you can do all of those things as a known individual and as a trusted collaborator. So that's the critical part of Hub Premium, is that identity that it provides. So a key concept of Hub Premium is that it organizes engagement around specific topics, or what we call initiatives. So an initiative is really any specific organizational policy or project, and it uses the initiative concept as the mechanism to organize that collaboration. So it does this by enabling you to create initiative-based collaboration teams, and largely that would be from, initially at least, internal staff. So you might have a business lead for a particular policy area or initiative. You might use the GIS lead. You might also involve a comms manager. So you have an internal group that then helps create and support one or more initiatives. And those initiatives could be focused on any number of different topics. So reducing road deaths is the target for the Vision Zero global initiative. It could also be that you focus on regeneration or economic development, tackling the broken housing market, encouraging volunteerism. So by way of example, the Mayor of London has lots of initiatives. So if you sign up to the Mayor's Twitter account, you'll see that they release quite a few initiatives. So they have things like the greenest global city in the world, the most walkable city in the world, and the best city in the world for cycling. So there's no shortage of initiative ideas that you can use to collaborate and engage with your customers. The key is, how do you do that engagement, and how do you make sure that it's effective? So this is really about moving away from releasing large PDF documents explaining about your project and taking anonymous surveys and moving to a more engaged and more integrated way of collaborating with customers. So as previously noted, initiatives and ArcGIS Hub can use the capabilities within the ArcGIS platform to help engage those customers. So for example, you can use digital surveys or crowdsourcing tools to allow customers to submit data, and again, they're submitting that data with identity, so you know who submitted it. You can also involve your trusted community collaborators within the initiative team themselves. So if you have an expert within your community and you want them to help shape your initiative, you can actually invite them into your initiative to do so. So Hub Premium continues this capability of improving trust by adding intent and focus to your transparency efforts and adding the capability for collaboration and customer engagement. And I said I would come back and mention that Hub Premium has tools for helping you to create and manage initiatives. And this is what these initiative templates look like. So the initiative templates provide tools for addressing particular specific policy issues. So they include initiative websites, apps, collaboration and data sharing capabilities, and demographic content. So these are public initiatives, and anyone who's got a Hub Premium license can reuse these initiatives. But importantly, if you build your own initiative site and you then want to reuse that for future initiatives, so an example might be RSVP build a bird survey site, they then want to reuse the same capabilities for a future survey, they can save that site as an initiative template and they can reuse it within their own organization, or they can even share that template further and share it publicly so that other charities or other organizations can use it to form their initiative site. So in summary then, Hub Premium acts as a bridge between your organizational website that typically highlights the sorts of aims and goals, the types of projects and work you're doing, and the content and applications and data that are typically hidden within your organization. So it allows you to expose that information out there in order to help collaborate and engage with your customers. Okay, so that is enough from the introduction. So what I will do is now change the presenter and hand over to James from Cheshire East. And James, that should be on its way over to you.
Okay, so my name is James Rounce. I'm from Cheshire East Council, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the open data and transparency journey that Cheshire East Council has been on over the last few years. So first, a little bit about Cheshire East and where we're located. So Cheshire East is quite a large unitary council within the northwest of England. We deliver both the standard services that you would expect a council to deliver, so things like waste collection and environmental health services, but we also deliver more strategic functions like highways, transport and schools. We border Manchester just to the north of us, and also Staffordshire and the West Midlands just to the south. We've recently had local elections, and we previously were a Conservative-led organisation, but we're now a Labour and Independent-led coalition council. So Miles previously mentioned some of the key drivers for some of this work, and we certainly recognise some of those key drivers within our own work. We've certainly seen over time that our customer expectations are changing. There's an increasing demand on all public services and councils included in terms of being open and transparent about the decisions we're making, and also providing information and evidence that helps residents and businesses and other interested parties understand where some of that evidence is being used, and also to be able to scrutinise some of that information. And customers expect more from public services than perhaps they did 10 or 15 years ago. And we know that that's also the case as when we've gone out and surveyed some of our residents. We found that one of the key drivers of satisfaction with the organisation is whether or not the organisation is open and transparent. And transparency was identified as one of the main areas that, if it was targeted, that it would improve satisfaction with the organisation as well. And underpinned a lot of that is also legislation, continuous change within the organisation, and trying to be transparent about the way that we also have to meet our statutory requirements and providing evidence to be able to do that. The final aspect then is that as we do that, then we're trying to be open and transparent in terms of what we're doing, so that hopefully it will improve resident satisfaction with the organisation as well. So we have been on a journey over the last 3 or 4 years now. So we originally had a working group set up, which was a council-led, so there are elected representatives, supported by a group of officers, with an executive director who was the open data and transparency champion. And we worked with that group to be able to procure our initial system, which was a system called Socrata, who are a US-based company. Over the last 2 years or so, we then built the site to up to about 150 different data items that were on there. It was largely just data, but with some geospatial data as well. We then took a decision about a year ago to then be able to then review what the market was available, what software was available in the market, and to see whether or not over that 2-year process things had changed at all, and we felt they did. So we went through a procurement exercise. That procurement exercise, following a review of a number of different systems, did then end up with us selecting Esri. That met better our needs. It was a lot more flexible, provided more functionality than our previous site, and it also was a considerable cost saving compared to our old site. So as a consequence of that, we then redesigned the site, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute, thinking about what our users' experience of the site was. The final aspect that we then got down to was then communicating and launching the site, and that's kind of where we are now. And one of the outcomes of that was that we decided to change our name from just Open Data Cheshire East, which it originally was, to Insight Cheshire East, which we felt better reflected the broader ambitions of what the organisation is trying to, and also what the functionality of the system provides. So when we were thinking about redesigning the site, we tried to think about who some of our key visitors were to the site, and some of this was informed by our experience from our previous sites. So we had firstly our regulars who just want to be able to access that information. We had then our interest groups who are perhaps interested in a particular theme, so they're perhaps interested in parking or environmental issues. And then we just had our residents who had perhaps heard about it, didn't have any particular agenda, but just wanted to be able to go on and find out some information about the local area. So with those kind of 3 key interest groups that we had in mind, we then began to be able to design the site around the ways that we thought, and we knew based on our feedback from before, that people tended to interact with the site. So we've got a search bar for those regulars, just to be able to go online and quickly type in some information. For our interest groups, we've grouped them around themes so they can quickly access similar information. And then for the residents, we've been able to make it a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit more eye-catching for them. So that information is presented to them in a way that's a little bit more easier for them to understand. And some of that's been achieved by the functionality and the flexibility of the Esri solution, something that we struggled with on our previous system that we had. We've been able to use both custom CSS and Bootstrap, which is kind of like a library of code, so it allows us to more quickly develop items for the site than having to code them all ourselves, and allows us that flexibility to be able to design the site around what we want. And recognising, as Miles mentioned before, that freedom of information, we also have a separate freedom of information log. We have a suggested data set on our open data portal, but we also want to say to people, well, before you request any of that information, have you checked whether or not that information is already available, and you can do so by using this search tool. The other aspect of that is reducing the burden on ourselves, because once we've then published information proactively onto the site, we can then say, well, your FOI request, if it's along the same lines, is exempt from an FOI request because we've already proactively published that. And that's one of the things that we did as part of the redesign of the site, was to look at what our common FOI requests were, and to, rather than reactively publish that information, but to proactively look at those common requests and publish them on the open data site. So it's helping to bring some benefits to the organisation as well. One of the other aspects that was particularly key and useful for Cheshire East Council was the ability to be able to publish the information in different formats. So we don't just have the data, we can also present the information in maps, but more importantly, for us anyway, we can publish the information as map stories. So we can provide different information in different formats, meeting those different user needs, but also it's the concept of one data and many different views of that data. So we don't just have the data download, we can also provide that information in a map-based format, in that web story format. And once we then upload or update that underlying information, it then cascades through the different aspects and the different web applications that we have for those different user groups, without us then having to think, right, well, we need to go back to that particular source and update that source and update that source. It's all in that one place. So this is a little bit about our ambition, but I think the key things to remember is, yes, there's a customer focus to this, but there's also organisational benefits. It's saving us time, it's improving our reputation, it's also hopefully going to lead to better services for residents as well. And it's important not to forget that there's some organisational benefits as well. We're fortunate that our new leader of Cheshire East Council has been quite supportive of the work, and was also a member of the Transparency Members Working Group, and now has obviously supported the launch of the site. And finally, we've just got some opportunities and next steps for us. We're obviously wanting to collaborate more with the community, publish the information on the website, and also look at ways that we can present that information again differently. One of the key things that we've got coming up is a community governance review for Cheshire East, which is a review of Cheshire East has around 140 different parishes, and within those 140 parishes there's a number of different ward boundaries, and there's potentially going to be over 100 different ward boundaries that are going to be reviewed. Now that may well be quite contentious, because it may be that those ward boundaries may lead to an increase in parish precepts for a particular household in that local area, which we're hoping that we can kind of communicate some of these challenges and why these decisions are being made, and also lead into the consultation for that community governance review through the use of the story maps on the Esri site. And should anybody want to be able to go and have a look, we've got our contact details on the bottom. So, and with that, I will pass you on to Katie from the RSPB.
Excellent, thanks James. And just while you're passing across to Katie, just to remind people, if people do have questions from what James has showed from Cheshire East's journey, or indeed from the hub intro that I gave, please ask those in the question pane, and then we'll come to those at the end. Okay, Katie, over to you.
Thanks, Miles. Yes, my name's Katie Cantrell, and as Miles said, I work for the RSPB, and so I'm just going to briefly talk about why the RSPB decided to license Hub Premium, our experience of using it so far, and also what we plan to do next. Okay, so to start with then, why did we decide to license Hub? So the RSVP is the UK's largest nature conservation charity, with our aim being to inspire everyone to give nature a home. Due to ever-increasing threats on wildlife, however, the resources we have to do this are becoming more and more stretched. And as a result, we're continually looking for innovative ways to better utilise those resources we have to ensure we can still deliver the greatest impact possible. One of RSPB's greatest strengths, however, is the passion and dedication of its volunteers and supporters. As RSPB staff, even with the greatest will in the world, can only do so much. But by mobilising this vast network of volunteers, RSPB members, and also not yet engaged but passionate members of the public, the potential impact we could have is huge. We need to be able to engage with these groups, therefore, and not only inspire them to take action, but also empower them to do so by providing them with the relevant tools and support needed. And technology is already playing a really key part in enabling us to achieve this. So the RSVP already uses several public-facing websites to help us communicate key messages to the wider public and encourage them to get involved in specific causes. Two current and successful examples of these are our Swift Action and Project Puffin sites. So the Swift Action website was set up in response to swift numbers having plummeted in recent years, with the loss of nest sites thought to be at least partly responsible for this decline. This site therefore enables members of the public to report sightings of swift nests, with the data collected then being made available to non-RSVP local swift groups and councils who can use it to make positive decisions for swifts. The other example is our Project Puffin website, and this is a citizen science project that asks people to submit photographs of puffins with food in their mouths. This data is then analysed by scientists within the RSVP to research how puffins' diets have changed over time, providing vital insights into what could be contributing to the species decline. Both of these websites therefore provide a two-way platform to both inform members of the public of a specific conservation issue, as well as providing them with the opportunity to get directly involved. And sites like these are really valuable, but they do come with several downsides. As unfortunately, bespoke sites like these have to be developed by either internal or external web developers, with this resulting in them being both costly to create and also maintain. The reliance on specialist developer resource, which is also often in short supply, means that sites like these can often also take a long time to produce. And for some projects, therefore, creating such sites as these just isn't currently feasible. Hub, however, addresses many of these issues. As price-wise, an annual Hub license, which would enable us to produce multiple sites, is a fraction of the price we may pay for just one bespoke site, like the ones I've just shown. Hub sites also don't require specialist developer resource to set up or maintain, with these being able to be created and supported in-house within the data team. This means that they can be created much more quickly and on demand, as well as providing us with much more control over their content and format. We're confident, therefore, that Hub will enable us to produce more sites more quickly and easily than ever before, and most importantly, give us the potential to reach more people and support more causes. So we are still very new to Hub, and I'm sure we have a lot to learn still about some of its capabilities, but we are excited by its potential. And over the last few months, we've therefore been exploring the various ways we could use it across the organisation. This has included speaking to our internal web and digital teams to discuss how Hub could fit in with our existing web presence, with us initially looking to use Hub for specific projects that focus on a discrete target audiences like a particular group of volunteers. We've also started creating several test sites, one of which I'll show you in a second, to enable us within the data team to further explore the capabilities of Hub, as well as enabling us to use these sites to help demonstrate the potential of Hub to other teams across the wider organisation. And just recently, we've also started working with a handful of both internal and partnership projects to look at the potential of setting up Hub sites for these. And so hopefully, we will start to have some actual live Hub sites very soon. Okay, so I'm now just going to finish off by giving a very quick demonstration of one of our test sites to show you how we set this up and also the types of features it contains. So, so this is our test site, and it's been created around the idea of a fictitious initiative to help save British toucans, but with intending to just help demonstrate how for similar real RSVP projects could potentially be set up in the future. So if we just scroll down, you can see on this front page, we've set up 3 main areas. The first 2 of which are open for anyone visiting the site to explore, but with the project team area being locked down to only enable individuals who are signed up as volunteers to the project the ability to access. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So I'll start off by going into the Learn About the Project area. So this section is intended to just provide an overview of the project and inform visitors to the site of the conservation issues being faced. We've also tried to particularly highlight the range of media formats that can be used within Hub to help portray these key messages. So at the top, you can hopefully see that we've embedded an interactive map showing the distribution of species from the data in the past compared to the present. And then below this, we've also used a combination of text and images, as well as videos. If a visitor to the site was then interested in getting more involved in the project, they could then go back to the homepage and go to the Get Involved section. This area then provides a bit more detail on what becoming a volunteer would entail, as well as enabling the user to follow the initiative and register their interest in signing up as a volunteer. And we've also included a calendar of upcoming training events to show the option of including something like this within the site. Once a volunteer has signed up to the initiative, this then provides the user with an identity, which means we can then contact them about becoming a volunteer. And also, once they are fully trained and signed up, also provide them with the relevant permissions to enable them to access the project team area. So if I now go into the project team area, you'll hopefully be able to see that we've set this up to include 3 separate areas containing a range of resources specific to project volunteers. So the first one of these areas is intended to provide tools for volunteers before they go out and conduct a survey. So if I just drill into this, you'll see in here we've embedded a web map app showing the available survey areas for the project, with volunteers able to use this to both reserve a specific survey square and also then print a base map of their chosen square before going out onto site. Once a volunteer has collected their data, they also then have the option of entering that directly through the hub. So if I go back to the project team area and click on the Enter Your Data section, you'll see within here we've embedded a Survey 123 form. As it loads. There we go. So this will just enable volunteers to enter their data directly into the site and then submit this. The final area of the project team area is the results so far section, which just aims to demonstrate how an integrated operations dashboard could be used to provide volunteers with summary data of results collected. With this just providing a really useful way to help to keep volunteers engaged with the project by enabling them to easily see the contributions they're making. So overall, we've been really impressed with the software, finding it easy to use and providing good control over how a site looks and feels. The ability to easily integrate existing ArcGIS components through apps and dashboards is also really seamless. And as I've hopefully shown, provides a wealth of potential options for data-driven two-way engagement between us and our volunteers, which is just fantastic. I really hope that's been useful, and I'll now change over screens and hand over to Charlie.
Great, thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie. That was a really interesting demo, I thought, of how Premium can be used by RSPB. What I'm going to show you now is just some similar themes to what Katie showed, but also showing how, as a member of the public, as you become more and more engaged with an initiative that the host organisation is serving out on their Hub Premium site, how you get to see more content, and ultimately how you begin to provide information back to the organisation by collecting data as a named user. So what we've got here is a demo site, and it's all about adopting open space. This is our initiative, and I'm just a general member of the public. I'm coming in and I'm finding out a bit of information about what this adopting an open space is all about. So we've got some stats here. So this is information that's dynamically being updated and coming through from my AGOL, from my ArcGIS Online layers. It's giving me some information about how to get more involved. So I might want to follow the initiative, which means that I become a named user. And what that means is that I get a named user account in the community ArcGIS Online account that's linked to the host organization account. So I can continue and look through, see some more information about what's going on in this particular initiative. So these are currently active events that are happening. So in Edinburgh, these are, for example, cleaning street events that have been created by members of the public that have already signed up to this initiative. So keep on going. And what we've got here are some public apps. So what these public apps are held within what we call a gallery. And galleries allow you to control through groups who has access to what app. So these are all public apps, so everyone can see them. But I can't really see any more information yet about how to contribute until I start getting more involved. So I've become more interested, so I've decided to follow. So when I follow, it's asking me to sign up. Now I can either sign up through an enterprise login. So if your organization already has a membership system which is compliant, which is SAML compliant, you can configure that to work with your ArcGIS Hub Premium. Or if you want to use social media accounts, you can also do that as well. So I'm just going to sign up using a social media account today. So I'm going to take on the persona of April. I'm signing in through my Gmail. And that's going to create my account in the community account. And I will immediately get access to some more content that's held within a ArcGIS Online group that's associated with this initiative. So if you see now, under the Get Involved, I have an application form. And the reason why we don't show that until I follow is because I now have identity. The system knows who April is. I've got a named user. So that's fine. I've maybe come back a week later. I decided I want to register as a community volunteer. So I want to take the next step and actually maybe take on some training, which means that I can then partake in this particular initiative. So we've got a Survey 123 app here that's being used to collect the information about the volunteer application. Great. So I can put in some information. Great. Right, we'll select one of those postcodes. I'll put my name back in. And I may provide some more information to the organisation. Am I a member of an existing group? Do I have any experience, for example? And that's all information I can feed back now as a named user. So I submit that. And that information is then going to be received by the host organisation. Now, this can reduce a lot of time, a lot of paper trail that can be automated through using a digital approach here. So April's submitted a volunteer application, and I'm going to flip over to my Chrome browser, and I'm now going to imagine that I am a Sunnyshire open space manager, and I'm going to log in. So I've logged in as with my credentials, and if I look down here, I get access to the same site, but I now see down the bottom I've got a section for the volunteer managers. So again, just showing different content depending on my role and my privileges. So I'm going to explore the dashboard, see who's registered in the past couple of days, and maybe have a look at what their application looks like. So way up. So we've got an operations dashboard configured here, which will list all of the new applications. Great, we're here. Right. So I can see the list of my pending applications. So I'm a manager now. I'm going to look at April's application. Great, there she is. She's at the top. Great. I can go and have a look at her. Look at her application now. And I'm going to review that volunteer application. So again, I'm using survey 123. I've got the information that was passed through from April's application submission. And there's going to be a checklist there. You may provide some training, you may have supplied some documentation, and you may have contacted the volunteer. And yeah, we're going to approve April for her application. As you can see, the information has come through from her named user account. So we're going to send that now. And now, if I go back to April's view of the world, if I look at my Gmail account and refresh that, I should receive an email. So let's just load up my Gmail, and it's saying your Sunnyside community volunteer has been successful. Great, April's happy, and she's been asked to go and accept the invite to get access to further content, so she can start contributing information to this particular event. So again, we go back to the site. I'm going to accept the invitation. Yeah. Okay, so we've been invited. Yeah, I'm happy to accept that. And great, we've been accepted. So now when I go back to the site, I will get access to a further gallery. So I'm going to scroll down. And now, if I come down to the bottom of the site, we should get another gallery appearing. I do apologize for the refresh speed here. But I can now see a further set of applications that are now available. So I can now organize community events on behalf of this initiative. I can start adopting open space, so I can explore these apps and start carrying on content. And I'll wrap up there and pass back over to Miles.
Excellent, thanks, Charlie. Note to self, plug in the laptop next time and don't use Wi-Fi. Apart from that, hopefully everyone was able to follow that. So thank you to James and Katie for their presentations. So we do have some questions. So if I can try and access those. So the first question we had was, can you use ArcGIS Hub via portal? So effectively no, because ArcGIS Hub is software as a service hosted within ArcGIS Online, but it depends which element you're looking at. So if you're looking at Hub Foundation, i.e. you would like to create a data catalog within Portal, you can do that via sites. So effectively, the same code that creates Hub Foundation as a metadata catalog, you can use that within sites. In terms of Hub Premium and user identities and things like that, no, that's not available within Portal, because within Portal you would be using your internal named user accounts for that. Is ArcGIS Hub Premium the same thing as the Community Hub? No, it's not. So I think the Community Hub is really just a user feedback, a user engagement website from Esri UK. So it's nothing to do with ArcGIS Hub, no. So can you use the ArcGIS Hub as a platform for specific projects that would include restricted data? So instead of using it for a collaboration group, you can share data with a more restricted group. And hopefully through Charlie's demo, we've shown that yes, you can do that. So at each of those levels where April signed up as a volunteer, she got access to new collateral. She signed up to and got approved as a volunteer, then she was provided different collateral, different access to different data. So using the groups capability within ArcGIS Online, so groups and identity, yes, that's exactly what you can do. You can restrict data to different groups, different audiences. So there's a question for James. James, hopefully you're still on the line. So the question was, how easy was it to get everybody on board to get teams on board to do some work on streamlining FOI requests and better transparency. So have you got any advice on the processes you went through, or the buy-in that you needed to get in order to get Cheshire East to go down this journey? Was it, maybe it was easy for you, maybe it was as difficult?
A few different ideas and things to note, really. First off, I work in the business change and business intelligence team, but it has been a collaborative process with other services across the organisation. So particularly with our compliance team and with the compliance team that also brings the FOI requests. So we've been working quite closely with our team and the FOI team as well, and also our ICT team and the web team. So that's at an officer level been quite useful. And then we've also had people then joining that project as and when it's been appropriate for them to join. So other key services like procurement and so on. So services that perhaps have received a large number of FOI requests have come on board and supported the work. The other aspect to consider then is having a senior sponsor, so a senior manager or a management buy-in to the particular project, and using them as a lever sometimes. If you don't have a senior sponsor, then perhaps try and identify one, and it may well be maybe not necessarily your ideal person, or as in they may not be as senior perhaps, but they're senior enough that they can act as an advocate for you, probably somebody who is interested in data and can see the benefits for their service. When you're then working with the services, we found that rather than say this is kind of mandatory and take a sort of carrot out of the, or use the stick approach rather than the carrot approach, we've tried to say, well, look, there's some benefits for you in terms of doing this. It's optional. We're not going to mandate that you publish this information. It's down to you. We think that there are some benefits, and ideally what we found is that by working with some of the key services beforehand and being able to identify some low-hanging fruit, some services that perhaps are a little bit more receptive to the idea of publishing this information, use them as an opportunity to be able to develop some examples, and then when you're then going into that particular service that perhaps not so receptive to begin with, you can then use those examples to be able to say to them, well, look, this is some work that we've done elsewhere. It makes it tangible for them. They can then see that, and also you can then illustrate the benefits that service has then brought, and generally we've found that kind of approach works.
Question about hosting. Oh, sorry.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, James. So there's a question about can users download Survey 123 and then enter that data as they go? So yes, they can use the Survey 123 app. They could download that on their phone, and they could then enter data in the field. So if you made that survey available to a particular set of either followers or a particular volunteer group, then that group would log into that survey, and then you would be getting responses from them as named users.
Yeah, so field-based use cases where you're doing inspections, sort of cycle route maintenance. There's plenty of examples like that where we've seen those. There's a quick one here about where the data is hosted. Is there any? Is it kept in the UK, European areas? Currently, all hosted in the States, but I believe there are plans afoot to look at European-based hosting for ArcGIS Online. But that's certainly something that's coming in the future.
Yeah, and there's so if you go to Esri Trust. If you Google Esri Trust, there is a trust website which details things like all data is encrypted at rest within ArcGIS Online. And it also specifies the kind of US-EU privacy shield. So the Esri Inc., although they're an American company, they have signed up to GDPR rules. So they adhere to the rules of GDPR as an American company because they support the European distributors like Esri UK.
Got a question here from Mariette Cortman. Is the functionality of the ArcGIS Hub identity equivalent to an editor user type, or are there different identities with different functions as in ArcGIS Online? So think of the community account where the users get created as a standard ArcGIS Online account. The only kind of difference is that there's a back-end linkage to the host org ArcGIS Online account. In terms of the user types, when you follow, you get a creator user type with a publisher role. So that enables you, obviously, as a I think the kind of vision here from the development team out in Esri Inc. is that ultimately, as more engagement, as there is further engagement, so that the power users could then use that publisher role to create their own data as well.
There's a question here about, so does the data entered into the species survey site contribute to a local record centre, or is it just held in-house? So we're looking at running some farmland surveys for a trial. Could it be used to collect and store? So the data by default, it will be collected. So if you have survey running on a Hub Premium initiative site and you're collecting data, that data will go back into ArcGIS Online. It will be stored on ArcGIS Online. So by default, that's where it goes. If you then want to federate it on or pass it on to local record centres, you can, but that's not something that we do as part of ArcGIS Hub Premium or as Hub.
Okay, I've got a question about the difference between Hub Foundation and Premium when it comes to integrating apps. So with Hub Foundation, you can create sites just like you've seen and embed apps. You've got all that functionality to do that, what you saw. The key difference between Premium and Foundation, as Miles discussed, was that it's the community users that you get, those licenses allowing named users to contribute content to your host org. So that's the essential difference. So yes, with Foundation, you can embed apps just like you can embed data in a story map, for example.
So I'm going to answer one final question because I'm being prompted that we're running out of time, which is fair enough. So there's a couple of questions about pricing and pricing to users outside your organization. So the way Hub Premium is licensed, so obviously we explained Hub Foundation, all you need is an ArcGIS Online named user account, and you've then got that. For Hub Premium, the license is the licensing is split into two. You have an organizational license that you purchase the functionality for ArcGIS Hub Premium, and you then purchase, as the host organization, you also purchase those community identities. So when you purchase the initial license, you get 100 community identities included in the license. You also get 10,000 credits and other things, but you get that license, and then you purchase in bundles of 1,000, you purchase blocks of community identities. So it is the host organization hosting the initiative that pays for those community identities. It is not the end users. We don't expect the end users, so the volunteers or your customers, to be paying for their community identities. They simply sign up and follow an initiative. They're not actually being charged for those identities. So that is the host organization to decide to put on an initiative and get the value out of those. So for more details, specific details on pricing, please drop us an email. More than happy to come back to you and let you know for your specific organization type what the pricing is for the license, what the pricing is for community identities. Okay, so unfortunately, I think we have a range of other questions. We had a whole host of questions in, so thank you very much for asking questions. We will respond to all of those over email. I'd like to thank everyone again for joining the webinar, and hopefully we've managed to show how Hub can help you improve trust, your organisational responsibility, and indeed customer satisfaction, and also help with those more targeted services. If you've got other questions, please drop me an email. My email address is mgabriel@esriuk.com. And as we noted earlier, you will receive a recording of the webinar, so please feel free to forward that, and you will also receive a survey. Please respond to the survey, let us know whether it was useful, let us know what other webinars you'd like in future. And on behalf of Esri UK and our other presenters, who I thank again from Cheshire East and the RSVP, thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.